Hello and welcome back. We're not on the allotment today, we're actually at my home because I figured that a lot of us are stuck at home at the moment. So why not come to you from my home and we can chat a little bit about tomatoes. So in this episode I'm going to let you know which varieties of tomatoes I'm growing this year, how I'm growing them. I'll give you some top tips and tricks for growing your own. I've also got a few of these to pot up into bigger pots as well. So over here I've got 5 different varieties, and some are of different heights than others, as you can see. And I started these off in soil blocks, but I started them in the micro soil blocks, which are about 1 centimetre cube, and then blocked them up into these slightly bigger ones. But they're running out of room now, and I can see lots of roots poking out the sides of this block, so they're definitely ready to have a bit more room to grow. So what varieties have I got here? Well, let's have a look. So this is my tomato seed case that I've got from my big briefcase style seed organizer, and some of these have a bit more information on for me, and I can let you know where they're from because I know quite a few of you like to know that sort of thing. So this first one here, which one is called Chadwick, this one is from, if I can find it, Chadwick is from Real Seeds, and it says it's a really good tomato with an excellent balance of flavours. The fruit are a bit bigger than a normal cherry tomato and a deep red colour. So I do like my cherry tomatoes. In fact, most of mine are cherries, apart from the big one that I use for sauces, that sort of thing. We'll come to that in a minute. So yes, I've got these from Real Seeds. They're Chadwick Cherry, and that's my first variety. Most of these are quite new for me this year, I should point out. I do stick to a couple of favourites, which I'll mention. But yeah, Chadwick is a new one for me this year. Another one that I'm growing is Black Cherry, and I've grown this one before, but not for a couple of years. And they do turn to this beautiful, really dark purpley colour. And I just wanted to try them again because they really add like a nice colour to your food, and they roast really nicely. And I should probably let you in on a bit of a secret that you might already know. I don't actually eat raw tomatoes. I really wish I could, and I try them every year, but it's something about the texture with the crisp flesh and then the seeds and then it's just a bit of a weird texture sensation for me, so I actually have to roast them or put them into something, use them as an ingredient really, but I particularly like them roasted. Next up is a variety called Galena, and I'm really excited to grow this one this year for a couple of reasons. And these seeds they're also from Real Seeds, and it says a flavourful yellow cherry tomato from Siberia, round 1-inch fruit on vigorous vines, original seed collected by High Altitude Gardening Seeds Trust. So it's a yellow cherry, and it's an early variety, so hopefully this should be fruiting before the others. But what I find really interesting is that the leaves don't look anything like your standard tomato leaf. Can you see? They actually look a lot more like potato leaves, but they are in the same family, which is why you get potato blight and tomato blight, and if you get one they can easily transfer to the other. So they've got very potato-like leaves, but they smell, it definitely is a tomato, so I'm really intrigued as to how this one will grow, if I'll get lots of early yellow cherry tomatoes from this one. And the next variety that I'm growing is called Derby Striped, and as the name suggests, it is a striped yellow and orange tomato. The seeds I've actually been given by Garden Organic, who are in association with the Heritage Library. So this is a striped tomato fruit, was passed over to the donor in the mid-1960s by Dr. Lewis Derby of the Glasshouse Crops Research Institute in Littlehampton. So it was bred by Dr. Lewis Derby, and I've been informed that actually he also bred the Tigerella striped tomatoes, so this chap really does like his striped tomatoes, and they look great and they taste good, so I'm looking forward to trying this variety. And lastly in this tray is Amish paste, and Amish paste is one that I grow every year because I really do like making tomato sauces, and this one is a really great big tomato. You might have seen it in my videos before. So the fruits get really quite big, like humongous apples, and they're just great for making pasta sauces and that sort of thing. Now, I normally do save my seed every year from the Amish paste tomato, but this year I've decided to buy some fresh seed, and that's because I didn't quite feel that the plant was as happy as it could be, and I know for sure that these seeds are open pollinated, so I should have a really healthy, happy plant. And yes, these are also from real seeds. Now, there is one other tomato that I haven't actually sown yet because I've only just picked up the seed, but that is the good old Sun Gold, because it has a very good flavour. It's a small cherry orange tomato, and it's one of the sweetest tomatoes that you'll find. I'm sure you guys have your own preferences, and I'd love to hear from you which tomatoes you are growing, by the way, in the comments. Please let me know. So I've still got these to sow, but like I said, there's plenty of time. Still got a couple of weeks yet to finish sowing your tomatoes. And even though I've got these growing, I'm actually going to be sowing a lot more because I'm growing some for my neighbours and also for some friends and probably for some family as well. So I've got a big sowing session coming up. Well, now that you know what I'm growing, I thought I'd show you how I'm going to pot these up into bigger pots. So in front of me here, I've got some peat-free compost. I choose peat-free because it's more environmentally friendly and more sustainable. And in it, I like to add some perlite. That just adds a little bit of aeration to the mix, so it helps the roots grow nice and strong and helps prevent the compost from getting too compact. I'm sorry, I don't really have a specialised mix. I just gauge it by eye, really. Add a little bit more. I also like to add a little bit of vermiculite. This isn't really essential, but it helps hold on to moisture and helps prevent the compost from drying out too quickly. And we just mix it all together. So next up, we need to choose the pot size. Now, because my plants quite vary in height, let's see, can you see? We've got some quite tall ones and some shorter ones. I'm actually going to choose some quite tall pots for this one to pot it nice and deep, and slightly smaller pots for this one. So starting with the Chadwick cherry, I'm going to write out a label before I forget. Label written out. So this is quite a tall one. So most of these pots are, I think, 9 centimetre, but I'm going to choose a slightly bigger one, which is probably a 12 centimetre. I've just given these a good wash out to get rid of any potential bugs and fungus and potential sort of fungal problems that could happen if you don't wash out your pots. It's not something I often do, if I'm honest, but since I'm here at home, I could just quickly shower them all down. So I'm just going to fill the bottom third or so with some compost. Give it a shake. And then we're going to pot it quite deep. So you can actually, the fun fact with these tomatoes is that roots will actually grow off of the stem. So no matter how deep you plant it, this will all root and create a much stronger plant. And these leaves here are the seedling leaves, whereas these are the true leaves. Eventually the plant will actually drop these because it doesn't need them anymore. And you could actually pull these off very carefully. And so now all of this can be root space to grow. So you can plant all of this beneath the soil, leaving just the top set of leaves above the compost level. I don't know if you can see, but there are quite a lot of roots on there. So I'm just going to plant it nice and deep into the pot. In fact, I might take a little bit more of this out. So I'll place the plant right into the middle, and then I'm just going to carefully put lots of compost around the outside. Give it a shake, and I like to press it down a bit. Top it up, give it a shake. That helps it all wiggle down into the sides and into the corners. Gets rid of the air pockets, especially if you give it a little tap. Fill it right to the top. Give it all of the root space it can use. Pop in the label, and there we go. This compost is quite dry, so I'll make sure I give the plants a good watering once I've finished today. Got here another one of the Chadwicks, so many roots on that. I know that for a fact I can actually grow about 18 tomato plants in my polytunnel if I want to. So I've got lots of room to play with, but we've not passed the last frost date yet here in the UK. In Nottingham, that is around the first week of May or the last week of April, and my polytunnel is not frost proof, which means if I put these in there right now, they could potentially die if we had a hard frost. So I've learnt the hard way not to do that too soon, and so I will be moving these towards the very end of April into the polytunnel. Since this one is very big, I'm going to give it the biggest pot of all. I'm also going to take off these seedling leaves again. Be very careful, by the way, with the stem. Never ever hold a plant, or a seedling should I say, by the stem, especially if you're transplanting it by hand without using these soil blocks. Always pick them up by the seed leaves if you're at that young stage, because these stems can be very brittle. They'll break very easily, and whereas leaves will regrow, a stem will not. So if you break the stem, you've killed your plant basically. So unfortunately this pot does take quite a bit of compost. If I was to give you a couple of tips on growing your own tomatoes, the first one would be to know your spacing, because it's really important with tomatoes, because they can easily get the disease called blight, which is absolutely detrimental, especially if you get it late in the year. But you can help prevent that by spacing them correctly, giving them enough room to breathe, enough room for air to flow around the plants. I like to space mine at about 18 inches, which is quite generous. And I find that it just keeps up the ventilation in my polytunnel, and yeah, you just want to make sure you've got a good airflow going around them. You also want to make sure that you're pinching out the side shoots, and you'll learn about those as the plant grows, but you'll have the main stem growing up, you'll have the leaves that come off at a bit of a right angle, and then the shoot that comes in between those two is a side shoot, and if you let them grow, the plant will become really bushy and vigorous. It'll overcrowd all of the other plants, which will affect the airflow, and you could get blight, and your plant will be less productive. And it's just best to nip out those side shoots so that you get more fruit in the long run. It also helps you get a stronger plant. I find that when they have too many side shoots, they can sort of topple over, and they can be a bit side heavy or grow at a bit of a funny angle. So yeah, get rid of those side shoots. Another thing that you should know is whether it's a cordon variety or a bush variety, because that determines how it's going to grow and what sort of support you need to put in place. So if it's a cordon, then it's going to grow on one vine, and it can grow 6, 7, 8 foot tall if you let it. So you need to have either a bamboo cane or some string. I've got a video on how I set mine up with string. But yes, you want to know how it grows. If it's a bush variety, then it's going to grow much shorter, much stockier. The fruits will tend to ripen all at once, whereas on a cordon you'll get them for like a few months at a time. So yeah, understand which type of tomato plant variety you're growing. And finally, I did touch on it, but supporting your plants is really important. If it is a cordon variety that grows on a big vine, some of the tomatoes can get really big, really heavy, especially the Amish paste that I grow. I think I had one that was like 500 grams one year. So the plant gets really heavy, and you've got to make sure that your plant is supported. Otherwise, the last thing you want is your plant to snap in half, and you'll walk into your greenhouse or your polytunnel, and all your tomatoes and your plants will be on the floor. I used to use bamboo canes, but I found that the weight was too much. They'd either fall over, or you know, they're always leaning or poking me in the eye. So I've converted to using a thick string for the last 2 or 3 years, and I find it really works for me. So make sure you've got some support in place for your tomatoes and that it's tall enough, because your plants will get very tall, and I think people sometimes underestimate how much room they need to grow. And you want to give them lots of warmth as well. If you've got a polytunnel or a greenhouse, that's great. If you don't have those, maybe you have a sunny balcony or a south-facing wall. A spot that gets the most sunlight is what is going to ripen your fruits. So you want to position them in the sunniest spot you have with the most warmth, preferably south-facing, but you know, just the sunniest place that you have for it. There we are. Well, I need to top up and compost and pot up the rest of these. I'll then give them a water, and they'll still be living in my home for the next couple of weeks until the nighttime temperatures begin to rise. It is set to be quite warm for the rest of April, so fingers crossed we won't have any more frosts, but I'm not going to risk it. These aren't going anywhere until the last frost date has passed. I forgot to mention that I like to companion plant my tomatoes with basil and marigolds. I've got quite a bit of basil on the go already, but they work beautifully next to the tomatoes, and basil's even said to improve the flavour. So that's a good one to sow at the same time so that you can plant them all together when the time comes. I hope you enjoyed this slightly different video. Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed it, and if you did, then perhaps I will cover the other seed varieties that I'm growing this year, such as my squash, courgette, my chilies. I've got so many chili plants over there. I'm sure some of you might like to know what I'm growing. And yeah, so let me know what tomato varieties you're growing this year in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. How are they doing? How are they growing? How are you doing? Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time.